through it. So welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Hockey Hacks podcast, a proud member of the Hockey Podcast Network and the official podcast of Left Wing Lock, your number one source for fantasy hockey intelligence. I'm Devin Davidson, your host. With me, as always, Bruce Gunther. And joining us tonight, special guest, Jesse, is it Severe?
It is Severe, right? Yes.
Okay. I should have asked you prior to the show starting, but here we are. Jesse is the host or one half of the Fantasy Hockey Life podcast. So, Jesse, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks. I'm very happy to be here, Devin, talking a little bit of Atlantic Division.
Yes, yeah. So I should clarify episode 77. Tonight we're going to cover the fantasy preview for the Atlantic Division, Boston, Buffalo, Detroit, and Florida. Should be a lot of fun. Before we get into that, though, Jesse, tell us a bit about yourself, about your podcast, and maybe how our listeners can find you and get in touch with you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, Victor Nuno and myself host a podcast called Fantasy Hockey Life. We've been around for several years, I think 215 episodes now. And we've been doing previews over the offseason of all 32 teams and a bunch of prospect stuff. We're more dynasty focused, so anybody who's into dynasty hockey, that's kind of the audience that we cater to, but would love to have people aboard. Tune on in. Fantasy Hockey Life, you can find it about anywhere you look.
Awesome. So 215 episodes. So, I mean, how did you get into hosting a podcast? Is it just an interest of yours, or how did that whole thing start?
I have listened to podcasts thoroughly for years and years as I played fantasy hockey and other fantasy sports, and tried to start one podcast, a fantasy hockey podcast, with a guy like 3-4 years ago. That kind of flamed out after a couple episodes, and then decided to start my own. And then once Victor came in, it really took off. So we've been, I think it's been 3 years now. We've been rolling since July of 2019.
Okay, very cool. Well, good for you guys. Yeah, this is it'll be our second season, Bruce.
You bet.
We're excited. Actually, things went well in year one, and we've got some pretty exciting things happening. We've actually got a big announcement coming next week. So episode 78, make sure you guys check that one out because we're going to have some fun. A big contest to announce. So anyway, without any further ado, I should mention this episode is brought to you by Pro Hockey Life, the Ultimate Hockey Megastore, apparel, hockey equipment, street hockey equipment, training, fitness, in-store services, and much, much more. Be sure to check it out. Links in the show notes. And we're going to move on to John's list here tonight. This one, honestly, a bit of a late addition. John is not here to help us out with it tonight. But if you're new to the show, if you haven't listened to it before, this is John's shit list of players, past and present. Sometimes it's topical points of conversation. Sometimes it's just players. But tonight, it's the Vegas Golden Knights because, once again, they've messed up the goaltender situation. And I understand it, right? We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think everybody expected something to come down from Vegas after we heard about Robin Lehner and the double hip surgery. But it really messes things up for Logan Thompson. That was a guy that I had some interest in. Jesse, what about yourself?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Logan Thompson is a guy who definitely had some promise coming to the year. It's like, who is going to be the goalie for this team? So, that's it's not good if he's not going to be in that opportunity as much.
Do we even know if Brossoit is going to be ready for the beginning of the season?
No, and so I was just chatting with somebody on this about this on Twitter, and it sounds like Brossoit may miss the start of the season. He's made progress in his recovery. I haven't heard anything from the team specifically or anyone, but that's kind of what it sounds like. So there's a chance he starts on LTIR and they run with Hill and Thompson. But then once Brossoit's healthy, Logan Thompson is the only waivers exempt goaltender left on the roster. So similar to Jake Ottinger last year, it's just very easy to send him down if they have to, right?
Yep.
Do we think it's suspicious that the Sharks, who hate the Golden Knights, traded Adin Hill to them? Is this is this a torpedo move that they're trying to mess up the Golden Knights with trading him this?
That's a fun theory, actually. It could be. It is interesting. Like they were in the same division, right? And I don't know. It is interesting. They definitely are two teams that are not fond of each other, and it's fun that they made that transaction, especially when so many people had speculated on it prior. But I like where your head's at anyway. Okay, so with that, let's move on to headlines with the Hacks, August 22nd to the 29th. And before we get into the news this week, I just want to mention that we are giving away a draft kit from Left Wing Lock. Again, partner of ours. Mike does a fantastic job, very detailed. We're running that contest on Instagram and on Twitter, so follow us on Twitter at FHHacks, on Instagram at Fantasy Hockey Hacks. Go and guess the player. So we're doing kind of a Who Am I contest over the past couple weeks. The first entry was Shane Gostisbehere, and obviously I can't tell you the second one, but go and check it out. I'm going to announce the contest winner and the draft kit winner on Thursday, so give that a look. And then with that, let's talk about the news this week, Bruce. Are you up to doing the news again, Bruce, or am I?
That doesn't matter. If you want to do it, if your voice is feeling up to it, go for it. That's fine. I can.
Okay, I'll hack my way through it, as you say.
Absolutely.
All right, the Carolina Hurricanes signed 36-year-old Paul Stastny to a one-year, $1.5 million contract. He's averaged roughly 20 goals and 50 points over the past 3 seasons. Jesse, really quick, what's your take on that signing?
Yeah, Paul Stastny just loves to siphon off production from other people. That's always my experience with Paul Stastny. Rarely fantasy relevant at this stage of his career, but who knows? Maybe he'll take some minutes away from young Hurricanes that we'd like to see more of.
Yeah, what's your take on Jesperi Kotkaniemi as a player? I mean, obviously he should have been the second line center, but with this, does he maybe lose some of that time to Stastny?
That's exactly the kind of player who could pay for that. I mean, Kotkaniemi certainly has plateaued from what we thought he might be as a rookie. I mean, despite the spite signing that Carolina exposed him to a couple years ago to get him away from the Canadiens, he hasn't been all that. So yeah, he's the type of guy who you would think would have more opportunity that Stastny would probably threaten.
And Bruce, how do you feel about that trade or that signing?
I kind of thought maybe he would be a filler in for all Pacioretty's on the LTIR or LT, whatever they put him on. I figured he'd fill in that spot until Pacioretty comes back, and then he could be a threat for. That was kind of my thought behind it, but
well, that makes sense too. I just looked at it as the Hurricanes don't have a ton of faith in young Kotkaniemi, right? And to your point, Jesse, that we haven't seen what we had hoped to see from Kotkaniemi to this point in his career.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying that Kotkaniemi deserves the faith. It's just, what are you going to do with this guy? You're paying him a little bit of money here, and is he going to be able to finally take advantage of an opportunity, or is he going to start to lose time for the Paul Stastnys of the world?
Yeah. All right, there it is. The NHL and NHLPA are working to bring back the World Cup of Hockey in 2024. It's going to feature 8 national teams competing with games played in Europe and North America. That North American team from a couple years ago, that was one of the funnest teams I've probably ever watched. If you could have that team today with those players,
that would be amazing.
No contest. I think a lot of us as Canadians, Bruce, were pretty disappointed with the Olympic situation. We all were just clamoring to see Crosby and McKinnon and McDavid all play on a team together. McCarr, that would have been a lot of fun. So hopefully we get to see that again at some point, but. The World Cup hockey isn't a bad consolation prize either.
No, I wonder I'd never really looked, but I wonder what a Team North America would look like now.
I don't know if they're doing Team North America again.
It sounded like it was a one-off.
Yeah, I think they're going back to more of a traditional setup, sort of like the Olympics.
That was kind of a perfect storm for that Team North America, though.
It was.
But the thing is that there are always more players who should make a Canadian or an American roster than there are slots. And everybody you talk to about the World Cup of Hockey, that is exactly what they remember was Team North America. They're crazy not to do that again because everybody loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so much fun.
Yeah, and the style of hockey they played, it was basically, what would you call it? 1980s Edmonton Oilers. It was all offense and pretty much zero defense. It was just give the kids the puck and turn them loose, and that's literally what they did. And it was fun to watch.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jesse. They're crazy not to do it, but I think in their mind, this is really their replacement for the Olympics. The NHL would prefer this moving forward as the format of choice. They can monetize it, and there's less risk, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
And two, I think that one of their biggest gripes with the Olympics is they don't have access to any of the media after. So even like Crosby's golden goal, they don't have rights to that. And
oh wow.
That's hard, right? So when you want to promote the game and you can't use some of your best stars and some of the highlights from these key moments, I don't blame the NHL for being frustrated with it. But All right. The Vegas Golden Knights, not to spend too much time talking about them, but they signed Phil Kessel to a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. The 34-year-old spent the past 3 seasons with the Coyotes. Last season, he had a career-low 4.6 individual shooting percentage, down from his 3-year average of 9.5 and his career of 11%. So, Jesse, I think we can expect a bit of a bounce back, even just based on placement from Phil Kessel, but obviously his shooting percentage we should see some positive regression from him as well.
Oh, absolutely. All the Golden Knights have to do is promise to play him every night so that we can get that consecutive game streak. How weird will it be to see him do that as a Golden Knight? But, Kessel is still a lot of fun. He's going to be on a much better team than he was stuck on last year in the Coyotes' offensive challenges of last year. So hopefully he will get that shooting percentage back up and get a few more goals here in his golden years.
Absolutely.
Well, they're pretty much going to staple him to Jack Eichel, aren't they?
Oh, that'd be nice.
He's not going to play in the bottom 6, so he's going to play either the first or second line. They're not going to put him in the third or the fourth line. So it's either Eichel or Carlson. Is that their second? Or no?
He'd be center. I could see that, Bruce. I could see Kessel and Marchessault playing with Eichel.
Oh yeah.
I don't. Sounds pretty nice to me for a Knights fan. That's
so. Where are you drafting Kessel then, Bruce?
not early, because it's the Golden Knights. After saying all this, my luck, he'll end up on the fourth freaking line. Like, it's Vegas. Who the hell knows what's going to happen there?
Very true. Kelly, where did you feel comfortable drafting Phil Kessel in redraft leagues?
I would say he's a pretty late pick because he still is older. I mean, he has had that drop in production, so but he's at that right wing position. You get that eligibility, maybe a little bit off some people's radars because of his low production recently. So it's a late round pick, but there's oddly enough for a very old guy like this, significant upside to it.
For sure, I would agree.
Definitely.
Okay, and then I lied. We're going to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights a little bit more. Kelly McCrimmon told reporters Robin Lehner is having double hip surgery. He's had one hip worked on already. He's going to get the other done later. My initial take, obviously, was that Logan Thompson was going to see some more starts. We found out today that they just traded for Aiden Hill from the San Jose Sharks in exchange for a 2024 fourth-round pick. So Thompson, being the only waivers-exempt goaltender, again, may get sent down. This kind of, to me, Jesse, brings back memories of Jake Ottinger from last season. I know it's a different scenario. They're not carbon copies by any stretch, but it makes it for an interesting situation fantasy-wise anyway.
And we saw how that worked out in the end. Jake was just fine, and the guys who were older and didn't necessarily have that relevance sort of collapsed. I mean, Aiden Hill isn't quite as geriatric as some of the guys who were beat out in Dallas last year to get Ottinger his chance, but really, I mean, just to be honest, Logan Thompson is very good. Was looking forward to him. I'm still looking forward to him getting some opportunities in the Vegas net. But none of these guys are really ready to carry a load right now anyway. I mean, let's just hope that it's not a New Jersey situation where we have 3 backup goalies fighting for 1 goal all year and just imploding one after another. I hope that they can, whatever they're doing, the priority should be developing Logan Thompson into a successful starter for the long term.
And I don't think if push came to shove, I don't think they'd be really that worried if they put LB on waivers and he disappeared. I don't think they'd be too disappointed with that. That's $2.3 million in cap space they get back.
The only fly in the ointment there, Bruce, is does somebody want to pay Brossoit $2.3 million for a season?
Yeah, it's all depending on what. He's only signed through the end of the season.
And so, yeah, they're definitely not a terrible contract to pick up, but a lot of teams are up against the cap, right? So $2.3 million, they may not do Vegas any favors.
It depends how badly they need a goalie.
Yeah.
What are they doing in Montreal right now? Who's their backup at this point? They talking Primo and Montembeault at this point? Who the heck is Jake Allen?
Jake
they got
Allen
some
and
guys floating around.
Allen
there,
and
but-
Montembeault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sound like Price is playing this year.
Yeah, that's just it. So no Price. I guess you're counting on Allen. Allen isn't always the guy you want to count on anyway. Montembeault has flamed out a couple of times. Primo's the guy I've always had hope for, but he hasn't been able to seize that opportunity in the few chances he's gotten. So, maybe some of these guys get an opportunity somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's teams that are there'll be a need at some point, right? Things change too in season, so you just never know.
Definitely. We'll have to change Robin Lehner's name to Robo Lehner for getting both hips done.
All right. Before we move on to our fantasy preview, as a member of the Hockey Podcast Network, the Hacks are a proud partner of DraftKings. College football is back. It's time to enjoy the tradition, the fun, and the great offers from DraftKings Sportsbook. To celebrate the best time of the year, right now, new customers can bet just $5 on any team and get $200 in free bets instantly, win or lose. If that's not enough action, you can also bet a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets into one, like which team will get the win, which team will score first, and more. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet just $5 on college football and get $200 in free bets instantly. That's code THPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Terms and conditions apply. Check the show notes. All the details are there if you need, as well as referral services and counseling if required. Bet responsibly. Right, Jesse?
Absolutely. Bet responsibly. I didn't know that was coming my way fast and hot. Yeah, just got to be careful with yourself.
Just throwing you a curveball. Just checking in. All right, let's start it off with the Boston Bruins. So I'll give a little rundown on each of the teams quickly, and then Jesse, I'll just ask you, did the team get better or worse in the offseason, and kind of your quick assessment of the team, and then we'll kind of get into top fantasy targets. So 51, 26, and 5. They were fourth in the Atlantic. Goals for 3.09, which was 15th. Goals against was 2.66, which was fourth. Goals for percentage 53.7, 11th. Corsi for 53% at 6th. Special teams, the power play was 15th at 21%, and the penalty kill was 9th at 81.3. They've got 14 back-to-back sets this season, tied for third most with 8 other NHL clubs, and 29% of their games are played on light days. That's days where fewer than 50% of teams are in action. Key additions: Pavel Zacha in that trade with the New Jersey Devils, Keith Kincaid as a UFA, and then Eric Holla departing in that trade. So, Jesse, I'll go to you. Did they get better or worse in the offseason, or really no change? And then we know they're facing lots of injuries. How do you see the season going for the Boston Bruins, at least to start?
Yeah, that's the thing is I don't mind picking up Zacha. I don't mind getting back David Krejci from Europe, I guess. But I think that their results probably this year are going to be worse because of those injuries, because there are so many players on this team that getting 1 year older is just going to have an impact. I mean, father time is coming for some of these guys. And I thought last year they were going to fall off a little bit. They didn't, to their credit. They hung in there. They got easily into the playoffs in that really tough Atlantic Division. But there's some other teams coming for them. And I think they and Washington and Pittsburgh are going to be the teams that probably fade from this generation of teams while some of these young teams are coming up.
So just on that point, I was going to ask you, is it possible that Boston misses the playoffs? Because the sentiment is that if you're out of the playoffs by American Thanksgiving, generally you don't make the playoffs. Is it possible that we see that happen to Boston this season, just given their injuries and some of the moves in division? Like you look at a team we're going to talk about tonight, the Detroit Red Wings, right? They made a lot of moves in the offseason. Young team, I mean, and two, and there's a lot of moving parts like that. It doesn't always work out, but could you see Detroit maybe creeping in and Boston falling back? Is that a scenario that could happen?
It could happen. I think that I still would take Boston's roster over Detroit's roster at this point, but is it within the range of variance? Yeah. I mean, and if you're talking about a team making a decision at American Thanksgiving, there's going to be a couple players we're going to talk about on this Boston team that won't be back necessarily by American Thanksgiving. So is Boston management with the new coach that we can't really predict what necessarily he's going to do with this roster? Are they going to look at this and say, well, we put this in asterisk because we're going to have our real team back now, and now we're really going to see the results? Or are they going to say, you know what, it's too late, guys. It's time to sell off?
I would kind of lean towards them still pushing for it, just given that, to your point earlier, they've got some guys who father time is coming for them. They kind of have to go for it now, and so I can see them just dragging it out as much as they can. But maybe let's start there with some of these older guys, one being Brad Marchand. Not old, I guess, but in terms of hockey, he's starting to get up there. He's going to be out. Is it double hip surgery for him as well? I think he's supposed to be out until early December, if I recall correctly. Right now he's going in Yahoo drafts at around 123. My points prediction for him, I've got 27 goals and 68 points. I believe that was with him playing about 56 games. Jesse, I'll start with you. Does that sound about right, or would you take the over or under on that points prediction?
How many games did you say?
Roughly 56.
Yeah, I think it's going to be short of that. I think you're right on about the number of games. We had Fluta Shinazawa from The Athletic on our show, and he was saying he was hearing December back from Marchand. I mean, you never know that far in advance what the health situation is going to be. But then Marchand's probably going to start a little bit slowly. I mean, this is a superhuman, super duper athlete, and so you never want to count him out with a guy like this. But you got to catch him a little bit of a break that he's going to have a slow start. Maybe by the second half of the season, he's on that over point per game pace once again.
Okay. Yeah, last year 3.5 shots on goal was actually a career high for him, but his shooting percentage was only 13.2%, was the second lowest of his career. So there are a couple things that may work in his favor, but like you said, I agree. I think he's going to take some time to get back up and running, especially from a surgery of that magnitude. Bruce, for you, over under on Marchand?
I'm going to take the under.
Okay. Fair enough. Staying on that theme of graybeards, let's move on to Patrice Bergeron. Right now in Yahoo, he's going around 81st. I've got him predicted for 35 goals and 77 points. He shot at a career high last year, 4.0 shots on goal per game, 8.5% shooting percentage was his lowest since 2016-2017, and his team's even strength shooting percentage with him on the ice, 6.8%. That's down from his 3-year average of 10.6% and obviously below league average. So a couple things working in his favor as well for a bit of some regression next season. But again, Jesse, I'll start with you. 35 goals, 77 points, over or under?
It's going to be so hard because who's going to be playing with this guy? I guess Pastrnak. We'll get to him. I just refuse to bet the under on Patrice Bergeron because this guy is just you can't stop this guy. The conservative side of me says definitely take the under, but I'm taking the over.
Love it. Bruce?
I'm going to take the over too because while Marchand's gone, who's moving up? Is it going to be Taylor Hall or is it going to be DeBrusk, or am I looking even at the wrong side?
I think we'll see DeBrusk maybe move up to that top line with Bergeron. Because Pastrnak and Hall had some chemistry last year, so I can see those two guys playing with Krejci on the second line, and then DeBrusk playing with Bergeron and player X.
Yeah, I know. I think I take the over.
Yeah, last year Pastrnak played with Hall 62% of the time at even strength, and that Eric Haula was his second most common line mate at 46%, and the Bergeron Marchand, you think of that combo, they were only like a third of the time on the ice with David Pastrnak. So it definitely, there's something going on with Taylor Hall. Again, new coach, who knows, but that seemed to be working.
Okay, I was going to say let's go to Taylor Hall next, but we breezed over David Pastrnak, who's probably the number one fantasy target on the Boston Bruins. Right now going 24th, 25th overall in Yahoo. I've got him predicted for 50 goals and 95 points. That's probably optimistic, but last year, 4.3 shots on goal per game was his career high. He saw a career high in power play percentage as well at 75% power play share. And his IPP was down to 69, which was a career low for him. But again, lots of injuries, lots of moving parts. Jesse, do you see him? Will he crack 50, or is that just an optimistic outlook?
Gosh, again, he did that last year with Haula and Hall. What the heck? I'm taking the under grudgingly just because I don't think there's as much support for him around on this team. But I totally get why you would have that projection.
All right, Bruce?
I'm going to take the under too, but like Jesse, I'm just under. Like just.
Yeah, there's a few players out there that can still drive play on their own, and Pastrnak, I think, is one of those guys that I would not be shocked to see him score 50, but yeah, I recognize it's probably an optimistic outlook. So let's move to Taylor Hall then. Let's talk about him. 169, 170 in Yahoo right now. I've got him at 20 goals and 58 points. Nothing really underlying numbers there that was shocking or concerning. So again, if he plays with Pastrnak and Krejci, I think he could have a solid season. Jesse is 20 goals and 58 points in the ballpark.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, we're talking about two serious centers here. If Krejci and Bergeron are both playing center for this team, and Hall's going to get one of them, and possibly playing across from Pastrnak, I think 58 points is a very reasonable number for him. I'll take the over.
Perfect. Bruce?
Oh, I'm going over. It's Taylor Hall. One of these years he has to go over. Like,
Yeah. 20 goals doesn't. I mean, we're talking about a first overall pick here, and a guy who he's won a Hart Trophy, right? So 20 goals should be very doable playing with.
we know the
Pastrnak.
talent's there, right? He just needs the line mates, and if he can play with, he said Krejci and Pastrnak,
Yeah,
could be a big season. Could be.
could be. They're gonna lean on him more, right? They need him to produce this year. And on that topic, let's talk about his line mate, David Krejci. Comes out of retirement. His last season in the NHL, 2020, 2021, 43 points, 13 goals, and 61 games played. So that was a 58-point pace, 9.6 individual shooting percentage. That was his lowest since 2010, 2011. So realistically, Jesse, older player, took a year off. What can we expect to see from David Krejci next year playing with Pastrnak and Hall, supposedly?
I was going to go with more of a 50-point pace for this guy. I mean, certainly more like 50 points, because I think one thing is probably he will miss some games, right? An older guy like this, they'll probably have some time on the injured list or something. But I just cited him as a reason why other guys might perform. I think he'll have an important role as a playmaker, an experienced veteran, but I don't see him as a major points total for my team next year.
That's totally fair. This is a guy that in many leagues we participated in, Bruce, has typically slipped to the waiver wire, and somebody picks him up in the final quarter or final half of the season, and he plays that close to a point per game just based on assists, right? So if you're in a points league, great value on David Krejci, I think, but some concern there too as an older player. Quickly, let's touch on Jake DeBrusk. I think he's an interesting player. They're going to need him to perform next year. Last season, 42 points, 25 goals, and 77 games played. I've got him here at 26 goals and 45 points, going at 174 overall in Yahoo. Jesse, what's your take on DeBrusk for next year?
I think DeBrusk is a guy who will benefit from the change of coaches, the change of management here, because I think the word on the street was it wasn't necessarily working real well with the old coaching staff. So I think that he will have a higher point pace than what he's had in the past. I'll go ahead and take the over on your projection of 45.
Okay, Bruce?
I'm going over too. I would really like to see him light it up.
I think he certainly could. So, yeah, I'll take the over on DeBrusk as well. We'll move on to defense here. Charlie McAvoy going at 130 overall in Yahoo. My points prediction for him, 7 goals, 35 points. That was based on, I think, 52 games played. 2.1 shots on goal last year was a career high. 21 power play points to career high, and 65% power play share was a career high for him. I mean, he's the unquestioned number one defenseman in Boston now. Jesse, how do you see his season going?
Okay, so you're projecting 35 points out of how many games?
52, I believe, was my what it was based on.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a fair number of games to project on, and that's not a bad projection right there. I will take the under just by a touch. I think we're spoiled at thinking of more than half a point per game type defenseman like we've had in the last couple of years, and with a guy coming back from significant injury, trying to work his way in halfway through the season, I'll say he goes a little under that 35 and 50 pace you're talking about.
Perfect. Bruce, what's your take on McAvoy?
I'm going to take the under too.
Okay.
I think if we were going to talk about the next guy on the list, I think he's probably going to take his spot for that.
Well, let's start there, Bruce, and I'll go to you first. Hampus Lindholm, like, do we see him taking on a bigger role? Like, is Grzelcyk injured as well?
He was. I don't know if I think he was going to be ready for training camp though.
Okay, I haven't looked into that one actually, and that's my bad. But I kind of see Hampus Lindholm should take over some big offensive responsibility for this team, right? At some point.
Yeah, and if he does well in that spot, then they'll ease McAvoy and they'll be more comfortable in easing him back in as opposed to throwing him to the wolves as soon as he gets back. But if it's a mishmash back there on the power play, then they're going to drop McAvoy right into the fire as soon as he gets back.
Okay. And I should mention here, so I've got him at 7 goals, 36 points is my projection for Hampus Lindholm, going somewhere around 142nd right now in Yahoo. Jesse, what would your take be for Hampus Lindholm, at least to start the season?
I think Lindholm should get off to a strong start to the season. You know, he's never been the biggest point producer. I mean, you kind of share that with your stuff, but 36 points, getting a little extra bump with that powerful power play, even though it'll also be without Brad Marchand. Yeah, why not? 36 points, I don't think that's unreasonable for the situation he's going to find himself in.
Perfect. All right, let's just talk about goaltenders here quickly. This one I think was fairly easy to project, at least in terms of net share. I think this will basically be a 50% split next year. Jeremy Swayman, we know he's the goaltender of the future. He's should be their number one at some point, but you know they're paying for Linus Ullmark. Not a bad goaltender. So I'm looking at 42 starts for each guy, 26 wins for Swayman, 22 wins for Ullmark. Right now, Swayman's going at around 72nd overall in Yahoo and 151 overall for Ullmark. Jesse, does that split make sense to you and those win totals, or what would you expect to see from both goaltenders for next year?
I think it does. A 50-50, it is such a lot of this is going to depend on the comfort level of the coach and what kind of a start these guys get off to. Swayman is the guy that this team wants to do well in the long term, and he's the guy who kind of has that reputation from last year. But like you see, I mean, Ullmark has a much lower rank in Yahoo that you're showing, and yet technically he had better stats last year. So what are you going to do about that? I think Ullmark is going to get plenty of a role there. It's really a toss-up which one of these guys you want. In Dynasty, it's Jeremy Swayman. And
Sure.
So that's my thought process there, because in the long term, he's going to have that. They're paying Linus Ullmark a lot of money. I think they're going to skate him out there in the net.
Agreed. Bruce, anything else to add to that?
No, that's bang on.
Perfect. All right. In the interest of time, we will move on to the Buffalo Sabres. 32, 39, 11, fifth in the Atlantic. Goals for 2.79 is 22nd overall. Goals against 3.50 was 25th. Goals for percentage was 26th at 44.38. Corsi for percentage 48.31. Special teams were pedestrian, 16th on the power play at 21.2% and 76.4% on the penalty kill, 23rd. So they've got 13 back-to-back sets this season. They're tied for fourth most with Colorado, Montreal, Vancouver, and Winnipeg. 34% of their games played on light days. Some key additions, if you want to call them that: Ilya Lyubushkin, Cale Clegg, Eric Comrie, and key departures: Mark Jankowski, Drake Kujula, Will Butcher, and Aaron Dell. So, again, Jesse, I'll go back to you. Did this team get better, worse, or really no different in the offseason? And how do you see their season playing out?
Well, I think they have some prospects who are finally going to get themselves established that I'm sure we're going to mention. The problem with the team is they really didn't address goalie. In fact, whatever the opposite of addressing is what they did to their goalie position. They brought in a gaping hole into their net. So it's hard to see the team getting better counting on their new goalie situation.
I would agree with that 1,000%. And maybe let's start there, Jesse. We'll go right to Craig Anderson. Right now, I think he's just undrafted, which would make sense. I would recommend not drafting redraft leagues. Just stay away from the Buffalo Sabres tandem. I've got him at 40 starts, 49% net share. I think he'll miss a few games. I think Eric Comrie's going to play some games. I don't know who else they even have that they're really going to play. Right? It's an interesting situation.
Yeah, they got Comrie, they got Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen down there in the minors, who's had a couple of cups of coffee. I think Devin Levi is still too far off for them to use him. So, yeah, there's some goalie possibilities, but there's nobody you look at and you're like, okay, this guy's about ready to take over an NHL net. I just don't know what you do. It really feels almost unfair to this team to start out that way. I'm a Caps fan, and a couple of years ago when they threw out Craig Anderson in a playoff game, I'm like, oh my gosh, the world has ended. Craig Anderson is playing goalie in the playoffs, and now he's back to being an NHL starter. I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure either, but desperate times for them. And, like you had alluded to, they've got a lot of great young prospects on this Buffalo Sabres team. Some of these guys, you can just see it's coming, right? And so maybe we'll talk about one of the breakout players from last year. That's Tage Thompson. He's going at 140th right now in Yahoo. My points prediction for him, 34 goals and 67 points. Last year, he played at a 71-point pace. He had career highs in shots on goal at 3.2, 0.87 points per game. His shooting percentage at 15 was a career high, 66 hits, 16 power play points, 57% power play share, and just about 18 minutes time on ice. All career highs, 40 points and 24 goals in the final 39 games of the season. Really good stuff from Tage Thompson. Really came out of nowhere, Jesse. I'm not sure he can duplicate that, but I've got him having another solid season. What do you think?
Well, this was a well-regarded prospect back when he was in St. Louis. I believe he was part of the Ryan O'Reilly return,
Yes.
But really looked like he was a bust after a few years in Buffalo. It kind of looked like this guy is not going to amount to much. And then last year, boom, what the heck was that? I am like you when you say you're going to go a little bit under his pace from last year. I'm looking for a little bit of regression because I'm not fully buying that he can get that much better that fast. So I'm going to go just a touch under 67, but I think he's for real. I think he's going to hang around in this top 6 for a few years.
They're going to give him every opportunity to, right? I think just by that standard, yeah, he will. He'll still produce to some level. Bruce, what's your take on Thompson?
I'm going to say under 2, but like just under. It'll be in the low 60s. I think he'll end up with points, but I think he'll have some. He's got good line mates again this year. I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams this year.
All right. Let's talk about Alex Tuch, another good young player that's come over in a trade, in the Jack Eichel trade, actually. And I think Alex Tuch makes that trade look a lot better, right? I think given the level of production he can offer, I've got him predicted for 22 goals and 60 points, and that may be low. But, Bruce, what do you think?
You know what? I think it's bang on. Didn't get quite a full season in last year. There's injuries, so this full season this year. I think you're right on the nose. Okay,
so yeah, I'll mention here he played at a 62-point pace last year, and he said he had a bunch of career highs: shots on goal, power play share, time on ice. His team's even strength shooting percentage was 10.6% again, which was inflated for him, and obviously against league average. So there's some things working against him, and that's why I've got him at 60 points. But Jesse, what's your thoughts?
I mean, Alex Tuch, if you told me that was the prorated pace for the guy, I would say I could potentially take that or to even take the over. If you ask me how many points he's actually going to score, I'm going to say it's the under. Tuch always misses some time. He played almost fully in the COVID-shortened season, but he's missed time in about every other season of his NHL career since the Vegas Stanley Cup run year when he only missed 4 games. But I think he'll miss some games along the way this year. But he's a really good player, and it's great that he's going to get this opportunity.
For sure. All right, let's talk about Jeff Skinner. I've actually enjoyed Jeff Skinner throughout his career. Like, there's been times where he's been awful. There's been times where he's been a lot of fun to watch. Last year was one of those times where he's been fun to watch. 63 points, 33 goals, 80 games played. Right now he's going at 175th. My points prediction for him, 30 goals, 60 points. Jesse, I'll go to you first on this one. Do you see Jeff Skinner having another 30-goal season or 30-goal-plus season, or is he going to kind of regress again as we've seen in the past?
Well, he goes big or goes home, doesn't Jeff Skinner? I mean, he either has a great season or just an absolutely friggin' lousy season. And it's hard to predict which one is coming next for the guy. 63 points. He's done that 3 times in his career. Every other season, actually 63 is a career high. He's done it 4 times, and every other season has been well below that. So I am loath to predict that Jeff Skinner at the age of 30 now is going to necessarily blow away his career high. You have him at 60. I'm going to go just a touch below that because I'm not believing 2 years in a row of good Skinner. I think we have to have a year of bad Skinner, and then we can have good Skinner again.
Okay, that's totally fair. Bruce, anything to add to that one?
No, I'll buy that.
Okay, good stuff. I should mention, too, his secondary assist rate, 0.16. That was the second lowest of his career last season. So even just with that number in consideration, we could see a few extra assists on the board for him next year. And that was, again, why I had him up around 60 points. Let's talk about Victor Olofsson. This is a guy that kind of came in hot, and last year he had a career low 47% of the power play and 15-28 or 15-21 time on ice. So with some of the new guys that have come over, Olofsson's kind of seemingly the forgotten man, it looks like. I've still got him for 25 goals and 54 points. Jesse, what's your take on Victor Olofsson?
I think Victor Olofsson, 54 points is probably fair. The thing with Olofsson is we all have a weird impression of him because he had that really hot beginning to his rookie season, and since then he's cooled off to be just a fairly moderate player. But last year would have had a scoring pace into the 50s, so I guess we give him that. But I think that's the top end of what we're going to get from Victor, and he's starting to get a little bit more competition for those top 6 minutes that he didn't necessarily have next year. So, what did I just say? I think I'm a little bit under 54, just a bit under it.
Bruce, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I'd say just under 50.
Okay, let's talk about some prospects here. Not prospects, but just younger players that we had mentioned earlier. Casey Middlestat, right now going undrafted. He had 13 points in his final 20 games last year, and he was getting some time on the first power play unit. So, some optimism there for Casey Middlestat. I've got him at 20 goals and 50 points. Last year he had a 7.6 individual shooting percentage, was a career low. 2 shots on goal per game was a career high. So, Jesse, what do you make of Middlestat for next year?
I like that he finished off at such a good pace at the end, but this is a guy who I kind of feel like the Sabres wrecked when he was coming in from a development standpoint, and I'm not sure whether he's ever going to be a particularly successful NHL player. They have plenty of incentive to try to keep trying to make that happen because of the high investment that the team made in him. 50 points is a little bit aggressive for me. I would love it. I would be excited by it, but I think it's probably going to be more like 40.
Okay. Bruce, what's your outlook?
I'm thinking the same thing. After they brought him in the end of the one season there, and he lit the league on fire there for the last few weeks of the season, and then it kind of, like Jesse said, they kind of destroyed him. And now he's trying. Maybe he's recovered from that. I would sure love to, because I love the player, but I can't see him getting 50 points.
Fair enough. Okay, let's talk about Owen Power quickly, because really I don't know how much you can project based on a very limited sample size here. I think, what did he play, 8 games last year? Was that roughly what he got? 8 games played, yeah. So, 3 points, 2 goals, and 8 games played, 31-point pace. Right now he's going in Yahoo at 109.9 was the number I had. So that's interesting. I've got him at 5 goals and 32 points. Again, small sample size from last year. Jesse, what would your assessment be of the player?
I love Owen Power. I was fond of him in that draft class, and if anything, he has become more impressive in his years at Michigan. I think he's a mid-tier Calder candidate, and I probably would take the 32 points and a couple more. He is probably, because he is so hyped and he's coming in with some of the background experiences, is going to be a little bit overestimated in things like the Yahoo rank. I don't know how 40 points would match up for 109.9, but as a defenseman, that's pretty darn good. So I'm high on Owen Power, generally speaking. It's going to be hard because of the other defensemen on this team to catch the major role, but he's a great player.
Okay, and just quickly, I guess, Bruce, anything else on that one?
No, his point totals are gonna end up whether he gets power play 1 time or Dahlin gets it and Power gets 2. That's what it's gonna tell the points between these two guys, is which power play are they gonna be on? Are they gonna share number 1, or are they gonna be 1-2? That's gonna tell the tale.
Let's talk about Dahlin, because I've got him, like, in my mind, he's got power play 1 all day. That should be Dahlin's without question. Last year kind of was his coming out party, right? 54-point pace, 53 points in 80 games played. Career high in time on ice, career high shooting percentage, career high in power play points at 21. 12 goals, 55 points for a player going at 81 overall in Yahoo. Jesse, does that seem reasonable, or are you taking a different approach?
Yeah, I'll take that, and just a touch of the over. I'm a huge Dahlin fan. I think that as this team continues to rise, he will continue to rise. and be a significant. I think he's on the Aaron Ekblad path to greatness, where he has these disappointing scoring numbers for a number of years early in his career, and then he starts to become a few years into his career a bigger scorer than he started out as. So I think Dahlin's going to do that. There's more offensive firepower around him than there has been before. Well, no Eichel, no Reinhardt, so I guess I got to be careful what I'm saying there. But I feel more optimistic. It's a good feeling I have about this Buffalo offense, and they'll set Dahlin up and maybe put in some of the passes he sends to him.
Excellent. Bruce, what else you got?
Oh, I agree. That's
okay. Sounds good. Okay, let's move on from Buffalo then. Let's go to the Detroit Red Wings. They're 6th in the Atlantic last year, 32, 40, and 10. 25th in goals for at 2.77, 31st in goals against at 3.78. Special teams, 26th and 32nd at 16.3% on the power play and 73.8% on the penalty kill. 14 back-to-back sets this season. That's tied for third most with 8 other NHL clubs, and 34% of their games are played on light days. Key additions, there are quite a few of them. Andrew Kopp, David Perron, Dominic Kubalik, Olli Mata, and Ville Husso. And then key departures, Mark Stahl and Thomas Greiss. Again, Jesse, go back to you. Did the team get better this offseason, and what's your outlook for them going into this year?
For sure they got better. That's a ton of addition, and I'm not too worried about the departures, and that's even before you get into prospects that are coming in.
Okay. So let's start off with our top fantasy targets here. We'll Dylan Larkin had a great year last year, 69 points, 31 goals, and 71 games played. Going right now around the 145th overall mark in Yahoo. 30 goals, 72 points is my prediction for him. Would you take the over or under?
I'm going to take the over on that. I always have claimed to be the Dylan Larkin down guy, but I think the talent that's coming around him in that top 6, he has been doing this on his own. The Detroit Red Wings have wasted his prime, but his late prime, he's going to see a little bit of a renaissance because of having some opportunity with guys around him and maybe even a second line that will take a little pressure off him.
I've always kind of been a little bit indifferent towards Dylan Larkin, but last year our buddy Mike turned me on to Dylan Larkin, and he had a great year last year, and so I guess you could mark me up as a guy that's on the Larkin bandwagon now. But Bruce, do you have a different outlook on that, or kind of the same thing?
No, I'm thinking along the same lines. I'm thinking over. He's got improved line mates, and line mates, a young guy with another year, right? They'll have Verana for a full season now, so I'm going to take the over.
Okay, well, Bruce, since you mentioned him, and I know you're a big fan, let's talk about Jacob Verana. If the guy can ever stay healthy, I think he'll have a monster season. But right now, going 166th overall in Yahoo, my points prediction for him: 32 goals, 62 points. Last year, again, small sample size, 19 points, 13 goals, and 26 games played. One thing I wanted to mention, his IPP was 90.5. Obviously not sustainable for a forward, unless your name is Connor McDavid, but we're talking about Jacob Verana here. So, Bruce, I'll go to you first. Do you like the points prediction, 32 goals, 62 points?
I think it's going to be slightly higher than that. It'll stay in the 60s, but it'll be a little bit higher than that for a full season.
Okay,
Jesse? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say...
No, go ahead, Bruce.
I was just going to say he's finally going to play a full season with the Red Wings, and they're finally going to see what they get out of him. And I think he's going to perform. He's going to show that there's a lot of talent there that was wasted. All was wasted in Washington, right? They had him playing on the third line. Now he's going to get a chance to play.
He had opportunities in different places. I mean, Verana a lot of it is mental with him, and I hope that he can get on the Andre Burakovsky path to glory. Leave Washington and suddenly you flourish. But I'm skeptical on 32 goals. I'm skeptical on 62 points. I think he could have effectively a career year, and now I better look back and make sure he never scored 62 points before. But I don't know if he's going to quite get to that level, despite the upgrades that Detroit is in their offense.
Okay. Lucas Raymond, great rookie season. Right now he's going at 147th overall, 57 points, 23 goals, and 82 games played. 19 of 34 assists were secondary for him last year. So not terrible, but it's a bit high maybe. 25 goals, 62 points. Do you like him for next year, Jesse? Yes or no?
Yes, I like him for the over. I think Raymond's a huge talent, and definitely if he's fallen to something like 147 in the draft, like this Yahoo rank you say, I'm taking him above that as a right winger.
And I should qualify that. I mean, these are early Yahoo ranks too, right? So until a lot of people get in there, start drafting, these numbers are going to change.
True.
But this is just for point of reference too, right? David Perron, how do you see him transitioning, going from? I mean, he loves St. Louis, right? That guy would probably love to play his entire career there, but that's not the case. So, older player, but he's established himself as a productive player. I mean, last year, 57 points, 27 goals, 70-point pace. I've got him at 28 goals and 69 points. I think he could do it again. But one thing to note, 20 of his 30 assists were secondary, and that was a career high for him last year. So we may see a bit of a drop-off in the assist department anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how Perron does it, but he just keeps doing it every single year. At the beginning of the season, I'm not drafting David Perron. That's a sucker bet. He's old.
Totally.
He for some reason he gets all these points, but I don't really believe in it. And then you get to the end of the season, and he's got a 70-point pace. This guy. Even though it's a real heat check to go to Detroit to see if you can keep your scoring pace going, they might have enough around him to at least get the over on the pace you predict. But 69 points that's a pretty good prediction.
Alrighty, Bruce. Anything else on that one?
No, that's nope. Good, all good.
Yeah, I love that assessment, Jesse. It's like, how the hell did this guy put up that many points, right? Every year, like it's just the guy has cement in his boots, but he still does it. So, okay, Tyler Bertuzzi. I like this guy, especially multi-category leagues. He's a roughly 1 hit per game. 2.6 shots on goal last year is a career high for him. 17% individual shooting percentage is his 3-year average. So high percentage shooter. 165 overall on Yahoo right now. I've got him at 34 goals and 70 points. Last year, he was at a 75-point pace. Jesse, do you like the over-under on Bertuzzi?
Well, okay, I'm going to try to not step in a minefield here, but what is the rule now? Can he go into Canada to play? Because the 14 games he missed last year were entirely predictable why he didn't play them. They weren't injury-related.
Yeah, very, very valid point. I actually don't know the status, Bruce. Anything? I'll be honest. I've just kind of blocked it from my.
Based on the way things are going on in baseball right now, he cannot cross the border.
Okay, yeah,
so Major League Baseball teams are having to leave like half their rosters behind when they come to play the Jays.
So you're losing the Ottawa and Montreal games off the top, guys. That's bad news.
That's rough. Yeah.
And so you are going to be losing something there from Bertuzzi, assuming that nothing changes. Like you said, yeah, the Blue Jays are going through that right now. So I don't know that the total will be higher than that. I think that pace, though, is fair. A 70-point pace if he played 82 games, sure, I could do that. Bertuzzi seems to be coming to his own, and he and Larkin are both on a rising tide.
All right. Andrew Kopp comes over from the Rangers. 23 goals, 62 points. Last year, 53 points, 21 goals in 72 games played. So he was at a 60-point pace last year. 2.5 shots on goals, a career high. 19-11 average time on ice, career high. Bruce, I'll start with you. Do you like Andrew Kopp for next year at 23 goals and 62 points?
I have no idea. He's been all over the place. It's like, probably for me to be, I'd probably play it safe and take the under on Kopp. You just don't know what he got moved up in Winnipeg when they had injury issues. Now he gets traded to the Rangers. He gets a prime position, and now he's in Detroit. So it's
yeah. Jesse, what's your take on it?
I mean, this guy Kopp, through his mid-20s, he was a less than half a point per game dude who was just kind of sitting around in Winnipeg and was one of these streamers that you would stare off on an off night and say, do I really need to pick up Andrew Kopp just because Winnipeg plays 2 games this weekend? And then the last 2 years, he's turned into this hot commodity, like you said, Bruce, because he got some opportunities in higher lines. I don't buy it. I don't think that he is going to be an impact player in Detroit. I think he's going to fit in to this top 6 and be able to do something for them. But I don't know that I'm going to go with anything like the 62-point pace.
Fair enough. Okay, in the interest of time, we'll try and get through these last couple of guys quickly, and then obviously want to talk about the Florida Panthers. Still lots there to discuss. Mo Seider, I had this guy in 2 leagues last year. Great rookie season from him. I've got him predicted for 10 goals and 55 points. He's going on average around 45th overall on Yahoo. Jesse, is that a bit high or kind of where you take Mo Seider? And do you like the points prediction, yes or no?
Yes, and the over. We're playing 5 dynasty leagues now in Fantasy Hockey Life. We're drafting startup dynasty leagues, and we do a thing where you draft the pros first and then the prospects. They're in a separate draft. Prospects are anybody under 100 games played. In every one of the 5 leagues, Moritz Seider is the number 1 pick in the prospect draft. He is absolutely beloved among the fantasy because he's proven it. There's plenty of prospects who you could say that about, but Seider looks like he is going to be a star defenseman for a long time. So give me Seider all day.
Love the player. The guy's a monster, plays with an edge. Like some of the hits he threw this year, I just absolutely loved it. Yeah, he's going to be a rock star, that guy. Bruce, anything to add to it?
No, that's absolutely it.
Okay, and then just quickly on goaltenders, I've got this at basically a 60-40 split, Husso and Nedeljkovic. 50 starts for Husso and 24 wins, 32 starts and 14 wins for Nedeljkovic. But Jesse, how do you see that goaltender tandem shaking out?
Your guess is as good as mine, man. Ned didn't get the full love last year coming in. It's not like they gave him the net unencumbered and just let him run with it. Husso, of course, both of these are like hipster goalies from other teams, right? People who like all the prospect people loved, but they never really got the net on their own, and now they've come into Detroit. I think you're right in projecting that Husso is going to get the majority of the starts here.
Okay. Bruce, do you anything to add there?
No, I agree.
Alrighty. Let's move on to the Florida Panthers. First in the Atlantic, and I believe first in the NHL last year, 58, 18, and 6. Goals for was 4.11, first overall in the league. 2.95 was 12th for goals against per game. Power play, 5th overall in the league, 24.4%, and the penalty kill was 16th at 79.5. They've got 12 back-to-back sets this season, tied for 5th fewest, with Arizona, Minnesota, New Jersey, Nashville, and Ottawa. And 35% of their games are played on light days. Key additions, Matthew Tkachuk, Chris Tierney, Colin White, Mark Stahl, Nick Cousins, Rudolph Balcers, and Alex Lyon. Some departures, obviously, Jonathan Huberdeau going to Calgary, Ben Sherratt going to Detroit, Claude Giroux leaving, go to Ottawa, Mackenzie Weegar going to Calgary, and then Mason Marchment going to Dallas. So lots of changes in the offseason for the Florida Panthers, Jesse. I'll start off there. Did they get better or worse in the offseason, in your opinion?
I think they should win the award, whether it's they got better or they got worse. They got the most different of any team almost in the NHL. Them and the Flames are running even on that one. I love the talent that they brought in. Obviously, they lost a couple of huge pieces here. I'm going to say that they got worse because they lost multiple big-time players on that first part of their lineup. But also, I'm not real excited about who they got as their new head coach. So I don't know that Florida, you can't get much better than being the President's Trophy winners. But I expect a little bit of backslide this year.
That's my assessment of the situation as well. I think they got just a little bit worse this year and different, like you said. Like when there's that many wholesale changes made, can you expect the chemistry to remain the same and the results to remain the same or better? Like I really don't think, like you said, you can improve on a 58-win season. So. Bruce, anything to add to that?
No, it's bang on there. They're not going to be the same team they were last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think there'll be some disappointed fantasy managers out there if they're drafting with the expectation that this is the Florida team of last year. Let's start off with fantasy targets here. Well, Alexander Barkov, I think you kind of know what you're getting from this guy. Its health is always a concern with him, right? Will he play a full 82 games? And that's rarely been the case, but last season, 88 points, 39 goals in 67 games played. That was a 108-point pace. Shooting percentage was a career high at 18.2%. 57% face-off win percentage is a career high. He was on pace for 48 goals. I've got him for this year at 42 goals and 102 points. Jesse, do you like the over or the under?
I love Barkov, but I don't like projections going over 100 points for a guy. So I'm going to take the under on that. Probably something in the high 90s.
Totally fair. Bruce, you're kind of nodding in approval.
Yeah, it's exactly how I feel too.
Okay. How do we see Matthew Tkachuk doing in his first year in Florida? Right now, going at 17th overall. I should have mentioned Barkov was going at 14th overall. Points prediction for Tkachuk, 36 goals and 86 points. I believe we saw the best Matthew Tkachuk has to offer last season in Calgary. I don't see him improving on a 104-point season and 42 goals. Shooting percentage is a career high, shots on goal career high, 29 power play points is a career high, and his team's even strength shooting percentage at 12.4%. Obviously not sustainable as well. But Jesse, do you like the over-under on 36 goals and 86 points?
I am going to take the over. My projections came out with him a little bit over that level even, which is astounding to think that Tkachuk could top those levels. But he's going to be playing with some really amazing line mates. I mean, he didn't always get to play practically on the top line in Calgary. And I think he's going to get opportunities here. He's going to get some huge production.
I will agree wholeheartedly that Barkov is an upgrade over Lindholm. Nothing against Lindholm, but I think Barkov's just a different type of player, level of player. Bruce, what's your take on Tkachuk for next year?
I'm taking the under. I think it's going to take him. I think it's going to take him a year to get settled in and for everyone to get acclimated to him. Yeah. I think it's going to be under.
And I'm laughing, Jesse, because we're both Oilers fans, and so of course we can't show too much love to former Flames.
Well, now that they're former, you should be fine with them, right?
Totally, yeah. We love Tkachuk out here in Western Canada. I would agree with what Bruce is saying too. Different situation, different coach, different line mates. Like there's lots of that comes into play, and so I just think we should temper expectations a little bit with Tkachuk. But either way, fantastic hockey player, lots of fantasy value there. Sam Reinhart, last year, 82 points, 33 goals, and 78 games played. Bruce, I think we had predicted him for 70 or 75 points, and he just blew away expectations. Like we had 30 goals, I think was kind of our rough estimate for him, but he got a lot of ice time. I shouldn't say lots. He's actually down from his 3-year average, but 31 power play points is a career high. 16 of 33 goals came on the power play, so that was tied for third league-wide in goals on the power play. And then his team's even strength shooting percentage was also a career high at 10.3%. He had 58 points in the final 47 games of the season. Jesse, 30 goals and 72 points. I'm probably that's a conservative estimate, but how do you see Sam Reinhart doing this year?
30 goals and 72 points. I'm actually going to take a little bit the under of that. I'm looking at the left wing lock lines right now, and it's got him on a line with Bennett and Balkers. Is that the truth? Is that where he's going to be lining up this year?
I thought, Bennett's going to be your second line center, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, Bennett, Reinhart, and left wing
to be determined.
Central casting. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I would probably see it, because I think you're going to see Verhaeghe playing with Barkov and Tkachuk.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to take a little bit of the under. He had a career year last year. Let's let it be his career year. And, he'll still be very, very good. Maybe let's say 70 points.
Okay. Bruce, anything to add to that?
No, I agree.
All right, I just mentioned him. Let's talk about Carter Verhaeghe. I believe he's going to play top line left wing next to Barkov. And I think he's going to get some more power play time. He had just 22% power play share last year. Just keeping in mind that Huberdeau is now gone and Duclair is on the shelf until sometime in 2023. So opens up some opportunity for Verhaeghe. I've got him at 32 goals and 70 points, or is that pie in the sky thinking, Jesse?
Boy, that's a little much for me. And I love Carter Verhaeghe. I was so burned when he was a rookie and they put him on that first line, and I posted on Twitter, "What's a Carter Verhaeghe?" And a Tampa fan commented on it and said, "You're going to regret that take." And they were so right. They were so right. So I love Carter Verhaeghe, but I don't know that he's going to quite make it to those heights.
Okay. Bruce, a different opinion or no?
No, I agree. I don't think he'll get there.
Okay. Call me an optimist. 70 points for Verhaeghe. Mark it up. Excuse me. Sam Bennett. A lot of people were big on Sam Bennett going into last year's draft based on what he had done the season prior. He posted a career-high 49 points, 28 goals, and 71 games played. Like I said, 28 goals and 57 points, both career highs, 3.4 shots on goal, career high, and just about 17 minutes time on ice was a career high for him. So I've got 28 goals and 60 points. Jesse, do you like the over or under on Bennett?
I'm going to take an under when you're saying versus 60 points. I mean, I know he's been kind of a man on fire ever since that he's come to Florida. If you look at his time on ice last year, his number one line mate was Jonathan Huberdeau, and that was by a lot. So he's not playing 2/3 of the time with Huberdeau anymore. He's playing with some other guys now. And I just don't see him reaching those types of heights without the other guy to help him drive play.
Okay. Bruce, I'm just going to move on to the next player here, Anton Lundell, and I'll ask you first here. 26 goals, 58 points. He had 44 points in 65 games. That was 5th in rookie scoring and 6th in rookie goal scoring with 18 goals. 23-goal pace for him. So, Bruce, do you like 26 goals and 58 points for Lundell?
I'm going to take the under, but just slightly. Probably even low 50s.
Yeah, I see him playing third-line center, right? He's not going to get top 6 minutes. I don't think. Like, they need someone to play center on the third line. So, Jesse, you're kind of nodding. Is that's you see him playing third-line center?
I'm with you. Love the player. Much more offense than we expected last year, but under 58 points.
Okay. Duclair, he's out until 2023 with an Achilles injury. That's terrible. A lot of guys struggle to come back from that. I've got him at 8 goals and 20 points, and I don't recall how many games. It was maybe 32 games played. I don't know if he even gets there, right? Because Achilles injuries are so difficult.
I don't even know if I would draft him.
No line for me. I'm not predicting him for anything.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Aaron Ekblad, I've got him at 18 goals and 65 points last year, 57 points, 15 goals and 61 games played. He was on a 77-point pace. One point I want to make was two, actually, here. 0.8 secondary assists per 60. That's 300% higher than the previous season and 128% higher than his 3-year average. 29 of 42 total assists were secondary last season. So I kind of think we're going to see a bit of a step back in terms of assist totals. I've got him, like I said, 18 goals, 65 points. But Jesse, what do you think of Ekblad?
65-point pace, I'll take the over. The question with him is health. He's just been on such fire when he's been out there. Secondary assist rate is high, but then, you're a defenseman. Your secondary assist, sometimes you can have a secondary assist. I think that Ekblad is he could be a 70-point player if he could stay out there all year.
Okay. Bruce, let's talk about Gustav Forsling. 10 goals, 45 points. Last year, 37 points and 10 goals in 71 games played. With Weegar leaving, I think he's got an opportunity to step up and maybe contribute some more offense. What do you think?
Possibly. They've got another guy there, too, that could step up, and he's played some offensive role before. You just get the player's name here.
Oh, Brandon Montour. Yep.
So there's definitely an opportunity there. It'll be between him and what happens with Montour.
Okay. And then, Jesse, I've got two quick questions here for you. We'll cover, goaltending here obviously first. So Bobrovsky, I've got him starting 50 games next year based on the contract that he's going to get the share of the starts. I've got him at 34 wins. And then Spencer Knight, roughly 32 starts and 20 wins. Does that sound about right in terms of net share? What do you think?
Yeah, I think you got a Rene Saros situation going here. Bobrovsky is going to hang on to this job for a couple more years as long as he is performing very well. Knight is just going to have to bide his time.
Okay, perfect. Bruce, you're nodding in approval, so we'll call that our fantasy preview for the Atlantic Division Part 1. Before we get you out of here, Jesse, we had one listener submit a question. So as part of our Ask the Hacks segment, I was curious your thoughts on this. So they said, I've heard, this is Chandel actually, she said, I've heard of Apple Zingino's zero goalie strategy, but I'm still not sure if it's the best approach. Shouldn't you have at least one decent goalie? Her league is Yahoo head-to-head points. For goaltenders, it's 5 points for a win, minus 3 points for goals against, 0.6 points for saves, and then shutouts are 5 points. Would you draft a goalie in the 5th round, or is that still too early? So, Jesse, what's your draft strategy when it comes to goaltenders?
In a points format, I would say head-to-head points, you said, what is this, 12 12 team or something like that.
I believe, yeah.
5th round would be too soon for me because it doesn't matter where you get your points in a points league. You don't need to cover certain categories. The biggest value of a goalie is when there's like 3 of the categories that you can't win unless you have goalies, and then you really need to invest in the premium. When you have something like this, you can take shots a little bit further down the line. So I've got all the respect for Apples and Gino's zero goalie strategy. I think there's a lot to be learned from it. If anything, I feel like I'm seeing that implemented so much in my leagues that maybe some goalies are sneaking down in value. But I guess I would tend more toward going down a few more rounds before investing in goalies. And I'm just not going to be the guy who gets Vasilevsky or Saros.
You know, it's funny. I tried fading goaltenders. I tried the 0G thing a little bit last year. I didn't go full 0G, but Shesterkin fell to the 7th or 8th round in one of our drafts last year. And when you're staring down Shesterkin at the 7th or 8th round, I think you kind of have to take him, right? So yeah, but
that's fine. No, yeah. That's value though. I mean, we're talking about the 5th round. You need to take no. I mean, you don't need to. The mistake you can make is rushing it and thinking you have to get Sergei Bobrovsky here in the 5th round. Or whoever it is. Bobrovsky the year he fell off. Just pick an example of some guys who could really bust, because I think you're going to get more consistency as long as you have health from the elite skaters. If you don't have to cover the categories, you can stream goalies very easily in a points format like that. I'm gonna hold off.
Yep, I would tend to agree with that as well. Bruce, anything else to add?
Yeah, I would hold off too. I'm not a big fan of drafting goalies early.
No, I think for me it was if I could get my kind of elite forwards and defensemen in the first 5 or 6 or 7 rounds, that worked really well for me last year, and then get some goalies later. So,
love it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Jesse, we're a few minutes over, but you know what? We ripped through it, so thank you for bearing with us, and thanks for being here. We really appreciate taking the time to chat fantasy with us. It was good.
Hey, no problem. It's because I was talking so much. That's why we ran over, Devin. That's not your fault. No, thanks very much for having me on, guys. I had a great time.
Yeah, we appreciate it for sure. Where can people find you again if they want to get in touch with you?
You can follow me on Twitter at FanHockeyLife, all one word, or you can listen to Victor and myself on Fantasy Hockey Life, the podcast. So would love everybody to tune in.
Awesome. Okay, and then for us, if you want to find us on Twitter at FHHacks, on Instagram at Fantasy Hockey Hacks. Be sure to submit questions for Ask the Hacks, like we mentioned, at fantasyhockeyhacks@gmail.com, and visit the website, fantasyhockeyhacks.com. We'll see you guys next week. Jesse, Bruce, thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun.
You bet. Thanks for coming on, Jesse.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Take care.
Good time. All right. Have a good night, guys.